Mental illness is defined as a mental health condition that affects one's thoughts, mood, or behavior. It is considered a problem because it is thought to cause disruption and/or pose challenges in one's daily life. But sociologists are interested in asking the question, who decides what thoughts, moods, or behaviors constitute a mental health condition? Trained mental health professionals regularly define new mental illnesses and redefine existing mental illnesses. The official guide to what is and isn't considered a mental illness disorder is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It is updated every decade or so to reflect new diagnoses and change existing ones. Notice from the figure that the number of different mental illness diagnoses and conditions continues to grow with time. Note that the 5th edition of the DSM, DSM-5, was published in 2012. This manual is built by trained psychiatric professionals based on symptoms reported by patients or observed by other professionals. The symptoms are labeled, categorized, and added to the DSM. For example, one of the disorders found in the DSM is major depressive disorder. According to the DSM, this disorder causes impaired social, occupational, educational function. In order for a person to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder, they must experience at least 5 of the following 9 conditions to an excessive degree: depressed mood or irritability, decreased interest or pleasure in most activities, weight change, change in sleep, change in activity level, fatigue or loss of energy, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, diminished concentration, suicidality. Although the diagnosis process is designated to be standardized and straightforward, it requires a lot of subjective decision-making and interpretation. It is up to a psychiatrist to determine whether or not an individual is experiencing the list of symptoms. For example, when diagnosing symptom number 7, excessive feelings of worthlessness or inappropriate guilt, how is it decided what is inappropriate or excessive guilt? This implies that there is a normal amount of guilt that individuals should feel in any given situation, and when they are outside of normal levels, they may be considered to have a disorder. Norms vary from society to society. For instance, in Japan, most children feel obligated to care for their aging parents. Therefore, a normal household includes 3 generations of family members. There is a sense of moral obligation to care for aging parents. In the U.S., individuals feel less guilt about not directly caring for their parents. In fact, in this country, it is normal for children to send their elderly parents to elderly care facilities for the final years of their lives. In the U.S., only 10% of children house their elderly, compared to 65% in Japan. Can you imagine how these different social norms may be related to different professional assessments of what excessive amounts of guilt an adult may feel about placing their parent in elderly care facility? Here in the U.S., if an individual reported feeling high levels of guilt for a prolonged period of time after arranging for their parent to move into an elderly care facility, a psychiatrist would likely view this as excessive guilt. In Japan, in contrast, moving your parent into an elderly care facility is not the norm. A psychiatrist in that country would likely view high levels of sustained guilt over this decision as normal and not excessive. In other words, different norms of caring for elderly parents may also lead to different views about what amount of guilt associated with these decisions is normal. This is because what is viewed as normal in Japan is not always the same as what is viewed as normal in the U.S. This variation in norms is true for moods, thoughts, and behaviors. Which moods, thoughts, and behaviors are considered normal by society is different depending on the society. This also means that what is considered a mental illness can also vary by society. Sociologists argue that definitions of mental health and mental illness are socially constructed rather than objectively defined. This means that definitions of mental illness depend on the beliefs, values, and standards of behavior in a society. The view that mental health and illness is socially constructed does not deny that people experience psychological difficulties. It instead asks how the difficulties individuals face are shaped by their social environment.